Please help support the channel by visiting our Amazon store for such products like the Blue Yeti microphone, affiliate link below. Hey, what's going on everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo, this is $3 Theater, and this is my second review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. When I saw it on Thursday night at an early kind of like for-fan screening sort of thing, I was so excited, and when I got home, I was so mad. That's evident in my 24-minute review where I just nitpicked the film to death, as well as my follow-up video about how Disney ruined Star Wars with The Last Jedi, which has been pretty generally well received, over 113,000 views, over 4,000 upvotes, and a lot of people outright agreeing that the way that they handled the franchise was just poor. I mean, it was unacceptable to some extent. And you know what? After seeing the movie again, I still hold many of those same views, but overall, I enjoyed the movie much more the second time around. I think because I knew what was happening, I knew what was coming, and I could just prepare for it. You know, first and foremost, like I will talk about the different characters now. I think they're because there's so much going on in this movie. Like, this is the thing, there's too many characters. And that was one of the big problems. It's one of the reasons why the runtime was 2.5 hours. It's one of the reasons why some of the plot points from episode 7 didn't make it in or just were dropped entirely. It's also why some of the characters just are completely underdeveloped. Like, take, for example, we'll just kind of run through the list here. The Rose and Finn storyline. Arguably, this is the worst, most pointless storyline in the entire movie, and the second time around, that is still apparent. While I like Rose's character, ultimately, she's kind of like non-important because she doesn't really do much outside of wanting to punch her fist through Canto Bite, you know, because she hates the fact that these are arms dealers and stuff, which again is an interesting kind of poignant take on society and take on war, but it went nowhere. There was no consequence. In fact, them going to Canto Bite actually ended up costing so many more lives, right? They ended up killing so many people because they went there. Because when DJ's character, played by Benicio del Toro, turned them over to the Empire, to the First Order, in order to be able to get a ship and get paid and get out of there, which still ultimately made no sense why there was a double cross. I thought it was going to originally be a double cross of a double cross, a triple cross sort of thing. And no, I mean, even though they basically set it up for that, to where like he could have been this new kind of like scoundrel Han Solo-esque type character, or not Han Solo, I say Lando Calrissian type character. No, they just let it drop. I mean, I liked him a lot more the second time around, because I got where his motivations were coming from, but at the same time, underdeveloped and underutilized, and ultimately led to the deaths of a lot more people. And you know, they could have cut that entire storyline out. You didn't need to go to the casino. Joseph Gordon-Levitt didn't need to be the guy from Kentucky. I told them kids not to park on the beach. That was Joseph Gordon-Levitt, by the way. It just didn't need to be there. It was still dumb. And I get the whole notion about slavery and, you know, animal cruelty, and that was very much a ham-fisted message that they wanted to push through there. But you could cut out that entire storyline, and it would almost have no impact on the movie itself. Actually, if you cut out that whole storyline, everyone gets away and survives, hashtag the end. But, you know, you have to give Finn something to do because, well, you know, he's a main character that they don't know what they want to do with. That's the whole point, is they started off with Finn in Force Awakens, and then here his entire motivation was right. And that was another thing I want to say too, is people were like, oh, Finn regressed, he was a coward, he was trying to run. He wasn't. Finn woke up, and you know, like, he woke up and he didn't know where Rey was. The last thing he remembers is being in the forest fighting Kylo Ren. He's trying to find Rey, his only real friend. So that's why his motivations are clearly that. But then here comes Rose Tico, and they end up, you know, kind of just putting that aside, that plot point away, and then going in and trying to stop the active tracking. Which, and here's another thing too. Here's another way that the movie kind of messed with you. When Hux says, you know, we have them on the end of a string, and then it immediately cuts to Finn, it makes you think they have like a tracking device in his DNA or something. They don't, but I was like, that would have been a far more interesting plot line, that they would have had a tracker on all their stormtroopers, because they, you know, were brought in at a young age and given an active tracker that could have tracked them to other parts of the galaxy, rather than the technology they were building in Rogue One 30 years prior, which was, you know, which was now confirmed as been a thing. Like that was an Easter egg planted in Rogue One that was carried over into The Last Jedi, which I guess once I found that out is more interesting, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, all right. It would have been more interesting if Finn would have been, who they were tracking. I think that would have made it for a much more interesting storyline, because then it would have actually given him importance in the movie. Ultimately, Finn still had nothing. They don't know what to do with him. They should have killed him off. They should have let him self-sacrifice himself for the good, and that would have given him a noble death. But they want to obviously have the love triangle between him, Rose, and Rey, and then also they want to have a triangle of Rey, Poe, and Kylo in the next movie. So you can see that they're setting up these kind of like Venn diagram triangles of love that are just going to get complicated, convoluted, and ultimately don't need to exist. Now, moving over to Rey's character. Again, people still like to say she's a Mary Sue. I've defended it, but I will give them a little bit of credence here. Her character journey really wasn't a great deal. She didn't have much to do in the first half of the movie at all. She went to, Octu. She talked to Luke. Luke ignored her. She watched Luke drink green milk while the one alien was like, what's up? The porgs, all that jazz. There wasn't much there with her. It was just kind of like that back and forth. And then when he finally does teach her, she goes, and she goes right to the dark side. And clearly that frightened him. But that, again, is a large part of what they were trying to set up. They're trying to set up the notion that the Jedi, light, dark, it doesn't even really matter anymore. Like they can be blurred. Essentially, it's no longer just the paragons of virtue and evil. It's there was that line Snoke had used about how Kylo was rising to the light and growing stronger, and so then Rey had to come to the dark in order to be his equal. And that again was a power of two, the balance in the Force. I mean, it was something that you kind of hear mentioned every once in a while, but that's kind of what they were going for. And as a result, I do feel that Snoke and Luke were ultimately meant to be those equals. I think Snoke was referring to Luke as his equal, which is why he wanted to kill him. But that being said, it could also be Leia. We will talk about that. So what you've got now is you've got Rey, trying to figure out her place in the world, trying to figure out her place in the universe and everything else, and then the connection she has with Kylo, and that was good. That was still really solid. I really liked their interactions together. I liked everything about that, even though I feel like the Force projection that Snoke was using on them is still it's a hackneyed plot line, but it worked for me. It did lead into the whole throne room scene, which I still feel is excellent. Although a lot of people out there are mad at Rey for being able to hold her own against the Red Guard, simply because those people are trained fighters, and she's not. But I like to point out that she did spend her entire life on Jakku, where she was fending off, assault from people. There were attacks on her, clearly, as we saw in the first movie. She would have to hold her own and be able to survive. So the likelihood of her actually being able to do that is probably a little bit higher as a result of that. However, it does still require a pretty large sense of disbelief based upon what we've seen in these movies. And this movie and the last movie rely heavily on tell, don't show, which I don't like. I don't like it all. Show us these things and then tell us about them too, so we can then understand them. And that gets us to Leia's situation here with the whole Superman Leia scene. It's still dumb as hell. Killing off Admiral Akbar like that, still dumb as hell. As soon as she was out in space, the Superman theme song played in my head. And there's a video of that floating around online. That scene was so laughable. People in the audience cracked up. The two dudes next to me cracked up so hard. They just looked at each other like, what the hell is this crap? Got up and walked out of the theater, right? They got up and they walked out, and they had like center, seats, perfect seats, and they didn't come back. They hated the movie so much they got up and they left after that. And that's one of the things too. I find it interesting that the cinema score is still an A on this movie, but I'm hearing more people complain about it than those who like it. So you got that. But that being said, Leia, other than that, was cool. Like I said, all they would have had to do is cut that scene out. She got like hit in a blast, knocked out. The blaster, the shields came down, depressurized the room. Everyone else is dead. She's in a coma. Fine, I could actually buy that. But her and the Force powers make still very little sense. Days later, still make very little sense, unless it's something that's in the books and I haven't read it yet. Again, the show not tell situation, and they're not doing that here because so many characters, 2.5 hours, and they still left so much out. So we got Kylo. Kylo, again, all over the place here, like emo Vader, like a bipolar Vader. Like, I just want him to go on some kind of antidepressant just to calm him down a little bit, because he is torn. You know, Snoke said that his spirit is torn in two after killing his father. He clearly didn't blow up his mother. He clearly was having problems with that. But then, you know, he turns on Snoke, kills Snoke, and then immediately is like, let's just rule the galaxy together. And she's like, no. And then he's like, okay, well, then I'm going to try to, you know, I'm going to become the supreme leader. But even that could be a gaffe in and of itself, because at this point he is just like, you know, he's so full of rage. He hates his uncle, so he wants to kill his uncle. But he was willing to kind of put that all behind him in that moment if Rey was with him. Because let's face it, the two, you know, they want to. At this point, that's pretty much apparent. So, you know, and Kylo becoming the supreme leader at the end there kind of felt also a bit rushed. He didn't earn it, in my opinion. Yes, he usurped it. Yeah, he basically, you know, Brutus Caesar, so to speak. But that was really about it. And we didn't get a lot out of him there. I'm hoping the next one has a bit more. We got character development, and it was good in those conversations, but it feels so wasted at the end because there was no resolve from that. General Hux, why is he there? Kill him off. I like Domhnall Gleeson, but just get rid of him. The whole situation in the beginning with him and Poe, and Poe, you know, tooling with him, so to speak, was just, again, really kind of like was not setting the mood for what we were going to see. You know, the comedy stylings in this movie at times were cringier than the droids in episode 1. And over the course of the past 18 years, I've come to very much like the droids from the original Star Wars, the prequel trilogy. So, you know, but this wasn't very good. Poe's character I liked. That's a divisive one, because Poe's character arc, he's very impulsive, very brash, and you know, him coming off of everything he did in episode 7, where he got caught by the First Order, escaped the First Order, came back into Maz Kanata's, took out 8 or 9 TIE fighters in a span of like 20 seconds, led the assault on Starkiller Base, was able to go in single-handedly, take out Starkiller Base. It makes perfect sense that he is going to be this very ballsy, very brash individual, and he's going to want to do what he needs to do. So when he has the opportunity to take out a dreadnought, he doesn't hesitate. He sends everybody in ill-prepared, ill-equipped, and yes, at the end, they lose all their bombers. Rose's sister dies. You know, and then Leia demotes him because of his brash actions. When she says that, yeah, people, you know, soldiers died or heroes died, no leaders, it's basically saying like, look, you didn't lead them well enough. You went in there, you got lucky, but clearly you've made mistakes. And his arc was to kind of understand that, which, you know, there's the mutiny against Vice Admiral Holdo, which I get entirely. Because at the same time, she could have just also told him her plan. I don't know why she didn't. At that point, if there's 400 people left, fuck it. What are they going to do? You know, where are they going to go? Clearly, you know, no one, like, people were on board with the plan. Why not just tell everybody that's the plan? So that part, you know, was for his motivation into the mutiny and everything else, and to buy time for Rose and Finn. It made sense. But ultimately, when you look at it, you go, no. All she would have had to have done is just tell him. Just tell him. That's it. And it would have been over. It would have been fine. She could have told him, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And again, if she would have told him that in the beginning, before Rose and Finn took off, they would have been like, oh yeah, we can cloak all these transport ships. We're heading off to the base on Crate, and then, you know, no one's going to die. The 400 people are going to be alive. Whereas because of her not telling them, even though it made zero sense to not tell him, Leia obviously trusted him. Why not trust him even though he was demoted? Yes, I know he's a hothead, and she's trying to establish her dominance, you know, against this misogynistic guy sort of thing. And that's all it was. It was a take on that. It was just pride cometh before the fall, essentially. So you got that. And then, you know, but Poe, I think at the end when he was like, pull back, we can't win this fight. He has that understanding, and that's when Finn's like, no, I'm going to go do it. And that should have been Finn's legacy moment right there. But no, then Rose selfishly comes in and saves him because she's like, I love you, dummy. Right? It just... But I mean, I get it. She's like, we won't win by fighting what we hate. We win by protecting who we love. And I get that. And that is also a way for her to protect her sister's memory, a way for her to avenge her sister's death, a way for her to do these things. Like, there were character moments with that. And it made sense in that regard. But at the same time, it just, Finn is kind of at this point a pointless character, unless they really plan on doing something with him in episode 9. Phasma, wasted. completely wasted character. I don't understand why she was even in the movie. I know they were trying to build her up to be this new kind of Boba Fett type legacy, you know, cult favorite character, and she still had 4 or 5 lines of dialogue and died super fast. Now, here's the thing. She was in a trash compactor when Starkiller Base exploded. She got out of there somehow. She's on you know, Supreme Leader Snoke's super, I don't think it was another dreadnought, but I think it was his just superstar destroyer or whatever the hell it was. It might have been a dreadnought. You know, and then as a result of that, she's going to have to probably get herself out of that. They're going to have to do something to really kind of build up Phasma, because otherwise there's no point. All the marketing, all the merchandising, everything with her on it makes no sense. It's a female stormtrooper, of which there was another female stormtrooper, by the way. She has one or two lines of dialogue with Kylo right in the beginning of the movie, or one of the people, but there's a female stormtrooper in there. And, you know, otherwise it's just a wasted thing. It's just wasted potential. Kind of like the Porgs. No one knew what the Porgs were before the movie. I hate the Porgs. They're not Ewoks. Ewoks had a purpose. Wicket is awesome. Wicket will always be awesome. They had a purpose. Porgs just are like, they're pigeon rats. They just nest. You know, and then there's a whole scene of Chewie. Like, you know, Chewie had no character development in this movie. Chewie shouldn't even have been there. You know, there was nothing for Chewie to do. He flew the Falcon in the end while Rey was piloting. Yeah, that was a cool scene. And we got to see Chewie, which I love. But it's like, there wasn't much there for Chewie to do. And again, this is the problem with trying to have these legacy characters, have them work within this plot while all bringing in these new characters, and it just failed to mesh in many ways. Again, I liked it a lot more the second time around. So who's left? Luke. Still don't like what they did with Luke, but there were a couple little things kind of peppered through it. So when Rey and Kylo first start kind of force talking to each other, Kylo says, "You're not doing this yourself. It would kill you. The power, the force of it would kill you." Okay. And we know that Snoke did it. And now we know from Snoke was saying that, you know, Rey and Kylo were kind of like, you know, coming to the center to be equals, and he wanted to kill Luke, as I mentioned earlier, pretty much means, in my opinion, that like Luke and Snoke were equally as powerful. Right. And as a result of that, Luke could, in fact, do what he did at the end there with, you know, force projecting himself to Crate and going out there and everything else. And that was him exuding the last of his power, because he had cut himself off to the force long enough to where he'd been able to go, you know, that was it. And then he died as a result of that. He just, too much power. It just killed him. He hadn't practiced enough to reuse it. It was just raw, untapped power that ended up just taking him out. That's how I'm choosing to justify it in my mind. Other than that, I still get mad. I still get mad. You know, Vice Admiral Holdo's character, again, one-off, wasted. We didn't care about her. That was the biggest problem. This was 2 movies wrapped into one. This should have been episode 8 and episode 9. That's what it should have been. That way we would have been able to be introduced to the character, grow to like the character, because Laura Dern was likable in the role. You could see there were good elements to her character that were ultimately wasted, similar to Phasma, and you know, they let her die. Now, granted, here we go, you know, going into the 9th movie, which is, I think, codenamed Carbonite or something like that. It's you know, they don't have any of the human legacy characters left, with the exception of probably Lando Calrissian. And after some of the fan responses to this movie, I have a feeling we're going to see Lando in the next movie. I have a feeling they're already on the phone with him right now. You're Billy D. Ultimately, I liked the movie a lot more the second time. At the end of the movie, I wasn't angry. I wasn't frustrated. At the parts I didn't care for, I was extremely apathetic to. I was like, let's just get it over with. Let's get to the parts I like. We got to the parts I liked them a lot more. I wasn't bored. I wasn't, you know, unentertained throughout the film. And I think on subsequent viewings, and yes, I'm going to watch it a few more times. I am a Star Wars fan. I will do marathons. It's part of it. If I watch Phantom Menace because I watched the other movies, I will watch The Last Jedi because of the same reason. So that's kind of where I find myself. But they need to do more in terms of character development with these people. This movie suffered from being too big. And that, I do believe, is a lot to do with Rian Johnson, and I believe a lack of actual leadership from Kathleen Kennedy on the subject matter. I think she very much, you know, I heard she liked the cut and everything else, but you could tell ultimately they don't know what they're doing in the writer's room right now. They're just trying to, I think they're just trying to give us the nostalgia and then just get rid of it. You know what I mean? They just want to give it to us a little bit, chuck it to the side, and go all new stuff. Because that's ultimately been their goal the entire time anyway, right? It was get rid of the EU, you know, and then go to the future. And I'm not against it, but what you have to understand is when it comes to pop culture or just, I don't know if I want to say literature, but entertainment or just whatever, Luke Skywalker is one of the pivotal characters, the most important characters ever. You could put him up there with like Captain Ahab and Moby Dick in some respects. And yeah, you could sit there and argue, well, George Lucas isn't as good as Herman Melville, or in some cases, maybe he's better. Have you tried reading Moby Dick? It's a chore. But the point is, it's part of literature. It's part of you know, our society or our culture. And he's been a large portion of that for nearly half a century. And to handle his death in the way that they did was miscalculated. It was antithetical, and it was poor. And you know what? If they bring Mark Hamill back as Luke's ghost to torment Kylo in the next movie and somehow justify how poorly they did it in this movie, then it might be okay. And I feel that J.J. Abrams is going to be the right person to do that. I'm so glad Rian Johnson is not involved in episode 9. JJ can come in and fix it, because this is a movie that made a lot of people look back and go, man, in George I trust, you know, and they wanted George, because no matter how much you may hate the prequels, there was an arc, there was a story. Carrie Fisher did a lot of work on the dialogue, which didn't really help with the ham-fisted performances, but ultimately there was a lot there that they were working on. Lucas was trying to tell us something different. He was trying to give us more lore and more history. Rian Johnson was trying to tell like 24 days in, you know, space, or 24 hours in space sort of situation that didn't really have a beginning, a middle, or much of an end, simply because there were too many characters to juggle, and it was trying so much to be both Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, so it can go into its conclusion of the saga, because at this point now the Skywalker saga is effectively over, right? The Skywalker saga is dead. So what are you gonna do? Where are you gonna go? I don't know. So like I said, second viewing, liked it a lot more. Third viewing, I'll probably end up liking it a bit more. I have a feeling I'll end up seeing the movie again probably pretty soon. It's Star Wars, as you can see from my shirt. I still love Star Wars. You can see the Millennium Falcon. It's a rug that I got. I got other Star Wars stuff around here too. I'm a fan. I have been my entire life, and I'm never not going to be. The original trilogy is fantastic. It's perfect in every way that it is. The prequel trilogy has got, I think the second and third movie are good. Phantom Menace has moments. Yeah, I'm going to say I like Attack of the Clones. It got better with age for me. And maybe this movie will get better with age for me as well. But it might take for me to see the third film to tie in any kind of loose plot points or anything else with this one, to therefore either justify it or ultimately make up for it. So what do you guys think? What did you think about the movie? Did you watch it more than once? Did your opinion change? Did you hate it more? Did you hate it less? Let me know in the comments below. And if you guys want to see more from me, you can do so right now.